Good evening, Sun Valley. It's great to see you all this evening. Very grateful for another opportunity to be able to be here and speak to you all. Very thankful for Cub and his lesson this morning. I think it really goes with the lesson we're going to be speaking about tonight, which is the progression of sin. And as he said in his lesson this morning, we don't usually go to the Old Testament, but we are going to tonight. So Joshua chapter 7 is where we're going to be this evening. I was thinking about kind of the ripple effect. And when you think about it, kids that are at a pond and, they want to see how far they can throw rocks. And when they find a big rock, they pick it up and try to throw it into the pond. But I want you to picture just, some birds at the pond. Thank ChatGPT for that picture. But think about kids that throw a rock at the pond, birds sitting there minding their own business, fish swimming, minding their own business. And the kids say, well, I want to disturb those birds. So they pick up the big rock and they sling it, right? And when they sling the rock, it crashes, the birds fly away. But you see, the thing about the ripple effect is that when you throw the rock, the water is not only affected, right? When you throw the rock, the water is affected. Now the birds are affected because of the rock. And now the fish are affected because of the rock. You disturbed their swimming. You disturbed the birds being together. And now everything is just thrown off because of that ripple effect, because of the rock, what the rock did. Sin causes a ripple effect in our life. And it doesn't just bother you. And it doesn't just affect you or someone else. It affects everybody around. Imagine a person that decides to go and he comes out of the bar and says, you know what, I only had 2 glasses of alcohol. I think I can drive. I think I'm up for it. And he gets in the car and he starts driving. And he starts swerving a little bit, but he gets back in his lane. He says, I'm okay, I'm just tired. But then a car starts coming and their brights are a little brighter than usual. I know we all know that feeling. And all of a sudden he swerves and he hits that car. Now that other person in the car has become dead. But this doesn't just affect the driver and the other person. Now the person that is dead, their family no longer has to live with that person anymore. Now the friends that were with that person that died, they no longer have that friend anymore. Now that church family that loved that person is no longer around. And for the driver, he not only affected himself, he affected the other person, but now he's affected this ripple effect that now he has to bring in the police, and now he's got to bring in those firefighters, and now he's got to bring in his family and affect his family, because everything that he did, because of the decision that he made, he affected those around him. Sin causes this ripple effect in our life. This evening, we're going to learn about Achan. Achan was part of the Israel camp during Joshua's leadership. We talked a little bit about Caleb and a little bit about Joshua this morning. But we're going to learn a few things about Achan and the sin of Achan. We're going to learn about when this sin actually started. And we're going to see that it's according to James chapter 1, that it was conceived in his mind and his heart, right? And when you act upon that sin, it brings forth death. We're going to see that here shortly. But we're going to see in whom this sin affected and whose lives it affected. And we're going to see how through the Lord and how the Lord commanded Joshua to punish the man who sinned. Let's turn over to Joshua chapter 7. And we're going to see here when the sin started. Joshua chapter 7 and just verse 1 here, just briefly. It says, but the sons of Israel acted unfaithfully in regard to the things under the ban. For Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, and the tribe of Judah, took some of the things under the ban. And therefore the anger of the Lord burned against the sons of Israel. So Achan here, he's introduced, and he and the others stole things that were under the ban. Now, if you don't know what under the ban means, it basically means that it was things that were dedicated to destruction or perseverance. Or, excuse me, persevere. You know the word. Things that were preserved, okay? So it was either things that needed to be destroyed completely or things that were preserved. But Achan saw those things that were under the ban that those things were already set to be destroyed. He saw it, he looked at it, he coveted it, and he took it. And then he hid it. And later we're going to see that he becomes a little bit embarrassed and ashamed about what he did. But Achan, he saw these spoils, and he took them, and he conceded. But the anger of the Lord, it burned against Achan and Israel. Again, here in verse 1, it says Israel was already acting unfaithfully. This is nothing new. We see this time and time again, right? We can see in the period of the judges where everyone was doing evil in their sight and they needed somebody to save them. So God sent them a judge, and the judge came and he won victories for them. But when that judge died, Israel continued in unfaithfulness. But then you go and you see that Israel needs a king. They need a physical king. They want a king just like everybody else. Like all the other nations had, we want that same exact thing. And we were doing a class one time, and I was talking about 1 Samuel chapter 8, and the man said in the class, he said, sometimes God gives you exactly what you want as a punishment. And he did that for Israel, right? Through Saul. This is the kind of king that you want, exactly like all the other nations. Here he is. This is who you wanted. Instead of me, since you have rejected me as your king, here's a king. That's like all the other nations. You see, when Achan, he didn't, at this time, when he sinned, he automatically put God aside. Because it's no longer what God wanted, it's what Achan wanted. You see, we talked about this in the small groups this week. And we talked about not giving the devil an opportunity. Because who reigns in this world? We talked about this on the table just this evening, that Jesus came and this was not his world. This is not our world, but this is Satan's world. And he is the Lord of this world. And we let him be Lord because it's our choice. We let him into our heart. We let him grab onto those opportunities. And we let him be the ruler of our life. And we put God aside and we say, Satan is able to give me the things that I want here. So I'm going to let him rule. Because obviously, God, you can't give me the exact things that I want. This is how sin works today. In Genesis chapter 3, after Eve, she saw the fruit. It looked good to her. And after the serpent just switched that one word, you will surely not die. God just doesn't want you to be like him. You won't die. Eve saw, Eve took, gave to Adam, and they became embarrassed. We do the same thing in our lives. And 1 John chapter 2 and verse 15, it talks about the kinds of sins that we encounter. And these very same sins are the ones that Jesus encountered, these temptations that Jesus encountered when he was here. We have the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the boastful pride of life, things that you've seen in patterns of human life. It happens today. Something that looks good, that makes me feel good, and something that looks that's going to make me look important. I want it. I need it. And in James chapter 1, verses 13 through 16 talks about the sin and the sin that we commit here. In James chapter 1, starting in verse 13. Let no one say when he was tempted, I am being tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted by evil, and he himself does not tempt anyone. But each one is tempted when he was carried away, when he's dragged away and enticed by his own lust. Then, when lust has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And when sin is accomplished, it brings forth death. When we allow sin to conceive in our hearts and our minds, and we allow it to grow and give birth to sin, it brings forth death. Didn't it do that with Adam and Eve? It was conceived, and they acted upon it. It brought forth sin, therefore it brought forth death. What about when we sin against each other here in the body? Who does that affect? How does that happen? How are those relationships? That when we sin against somebody else and we continually live in that sin, we don't want to sit with that other person. We don't want to talk to them. We don't even want to look at them. We don't even want to have a conversation with them. We say, you sit over there, I'll sit over here, and I'll mind my own business, and we'll just keep going. But we forget that when we do that, when we carry the hate in our heart, we become ineffective in the body. But what about when a leader sins? What about when an elder sins? What about when a deacon sins? Do you think that's going to have a ripple effect on the body? You bet it will. Who does this sin affect? It begins in the desire to please our flesh. Sin begins in that desire of, I want this and I don't care who stands in my way. I'm going to get it. I'm going to take it. It's going to be mine. Look at Joshua chapter 7 and verse 2. Joshua chapter 7 and verse 2. It says, now Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Beth-aven, east of Bethel, and said to them, go up and spy the land. So the men went up and spied out Ai. And they returned to Joshua and said to him, do not let the people go up. Only about 2,000 or 3,000 men need to go up to Ai. Ai. Do not make all the people toil up there, for they are few. So about 3,000 men from the people went up there, but they fled from the men of Ai. And the men of Ai struck down about 36 of their men, and pursued them from the gate as far as the Sherebaim, and struck them down on the descent, so the hearts of the people melted and became as water. Then Joshua tore his clothes and fell to the earth on his face before the ark of the Lord until the evening, and both he and the elders of Israel. And they all put dust on their heads. And Joshua said, alas, O Lord God, why did you ever bring this people over the Jordan, only to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites to destroy us? If only we had been willing to dwell beyond the Jordan. O Lord, what can I say, since Israel has turned their back before their enemies? Going down to verse 10. So the Lord said to Joshua, rise up. Why is it that you have fallen on your face? Israel has sinned, and they have also transgressed my covenant which I commanded them. And they have even taken some of the things under the ban, and have both stolen and deceived. Moreover, they have also put them among their own things. I want you to notice, if you read through the book of Joshua, this is the first time that Joshua assumed and did not pray to God before the war. Joshua assumed that the Lord would be with him and that the Lord was going to win all these wars. If you read from Joshua 1 all the way to Joshua 7, he's always praying to God before he goes into war. And this is the one time that he doesn't pray. This is the one time that he assumed that God was going to be with him and that they were going to win this war against Ai. But I guarantee you, if Joshua prayed, God would have said, you need to get rid of the sin in your camp. Someone stole things under the band and you need to get rid of it. They went up to the war, and 36 men died. Now, you might tell yourself, it's just 36 out of those 3,000. That doesn't really seem that bad. 36 families just lost a loved one because of the sin of one person. 36 men lost friends and brothers and people that they served with and people that they loved. They lost 36 people because of one sin. Sin affects those around us. And it's not just ourselves. Again, we can pull in modern day when if a leader is able to go around and say these nasty things and say you don't need to do this. I come to worship probably once or twice. Maybe I'll come Sunday night. I mean, it really doesn't matter. So for you, it doesn't really matter. God knows your heart. You'll be fine. And what does that lead us to do? Oh, the leader said it was fine. I could come once. My heart doesn't have to be in it, right? I can come. God knows my heart. I can stay at home. I can watch it wherever I am. It doesn't really matter. I don't really need to be here. I can come in late to class. I can come in late to worship. I don't have to take this seriously because my leadership doesn't take this seriously. But what about the members? The relationships that we have with each other? That if I sin against my brother or my sister and I affect that relationship, guess what they're going to do? They're going to go and talk to everybody else and say, don't talk to that other person. And then that person over here is going to talk to everybody else. And they're going to say, don't talk to that person. Guess what? Now we have tension because of a sin of one person. You talk about David. And remember David's sin. And I won't go through all the things, right? But, David committed sin with Bathsheba. And Bathsheba became pregnant. And when David found out, he decided to bring Uriah back home and tried 2 plans that went unsuccessfully and just decided to kill him altogether. But who did that affect? It affected Bathsheba. She lost her husband. It affected Bathsheba's father because his daughter just lost her husband. It affected Uriah. It affected David's army. It affected David's kingdom. It affected David's unborn son. It affected Nathan. And it affected his relationship with God. Jonah. When Jonah decided that he wasn't going to listen to God and he was going to leave and go to Tarsus instead of going to Nineveh, it affected the people on the boat. But you know what they did? They realized, oh, you messed up. You sinned against God. We need to throw you off the boat so that we'll be okay. We need to get you out of here. But it affected the relationship between Jonah and God. Peter, in Galatians chapter 2, and I said it right, Cub. In Galatians chapter 2, right? When Peter acted in hypocrisy, it affected Barnabas. It affected the other Jews. It affected Paul. And it affected his relationship with God. When you sin as a member, who do you think that's going to affect? It's not going to just affect you and yourself, but those around you. When you sin as a leader, who do you think that's affect? Because you are leading these people astray. What's going to happen? Their faith is now gone. Their sin doesn't mean anything. You can be gone and not come back, and it wouldn't matter. When we allow sin in our hearts and in our minds, we will allow it to conceive. Remember that the temptation itself is not the sin. The sin is when you act upon that temptation. The sin is when you decide that, you know what, that is enticing and I need it. That you decide to put aside your relationship with God and say, this is way better than my relationship with you. So how was this sin punished? We see here in Joshua chapter 7, going down to verse 16. So Joshua rose early in the morning and brought Israel near by the tribes, and the tribe of Judah was taken. And he brought the family of Judah near, and he took the family of the Zerites, and he brought the family of the Zerahrites near man by man, and Zabadi was taken. And he brought his household near man by man, and Achan, son of Carmi, son of Zabadi, the son of Zerah, from the tribe of Judah was taken. And then Joshua said to Achan, my son, I implore you, I urge you, give glory to the Lord, the God of Israel, and give praise to him, and tell me now what you have done. Do not hide it from me." So Achan answered Joshua and said, "Truly I have sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel, and this is what I did. When I saw among the spoil a beautiful mantle from Shinar, and the 200 shekels of silver, and bar of gold, 50 shekels in weight, then I coveted them, and took them, and behold, they are concealed in the earth inside my tent with silver underneath it." So Joshua sent messengers, and they ran to the tent, and behold, it was concealed in his tent with silver underneath it. And they took them from the inside the tent and brought them to Joshua and to all the sons of Israel, and they poured at them out before the Lord. Then Joshua and all the Israel with him took Achan, the son of Zerah, the silver, the mantle, the bar of gold, his sons, his daughters, his oxen, his donkey, his sheep, his tent, and all that belonged to him, and they brought him up to the valley of Acre. And Joshua said, "Why have you troubled us? The Lord will trouble you this day." And all Israel stoned them with the stones, and they burned them with fire, and they stoned them with stones. So Achan, he admits his fault. "I have sinned against the Lord. This is exactly what I did. I saw it, I looked at it, it was enticing, and I took it, and I hid it, and I put it in my tent." And the messengers, they found those stolen items in his tent. And Joshua had burned everything that was under the ban, including Achan and his family, everything that belonged to Achan. You see, when we sin and we decide to come to church and we put on a mask and we say life is good, I'm doing good. You know, we always have those conversations in passing where we say, "How are you doing?" And they say, "Well, I'm good." "All right, good." And we walk away. We never have those meaningful conversations. But when actuality, behind closed doors, when you leave here and you go back into the world, you're continually living in sin. You take that mask off, Sunday's over, I'm back into the world. There are consequences to your sin. Your sin does not just affect you, especially here as a body of Christ. It doesn't just affect you, it affects the functioning of this body. But not only that, it affects your relationship with Christ. It affects your relationship with God. So yes, you may be caught, but don't try to hide it from God. You may be able to hide it from us. You may be able to keep it quiet under wraps, but you'll never be able to hide it from God. Remember what Nathan said to God. What you did in the dark, God will bring to light. Those things that you are striving to still be in, I'm telling you right now, if you do not fix it, it is trouble. The more we sin, the more we progress in sin, the farther and farther away we get from God. Because God cannot be in the presence of sin. In verse 12 of Joshua chapter 7, it says, "Therefore, the sons of Israel cannot stand before their enemies and turn their backs before their enemies, for they have become accursed. I will not be with you anymore unless you destroy the things under the ban from your midst." You know, Paul tells us that a little leaven leavens the whole lump. You let a little bit of sin in here, and it expands. It causes that ripple effect. What God is telling Joshua here is that to be closer to God, you need to remove the sin. Get it out of here. Because it's not going to affect you, it's going to affect the whole camp. It's going to affect Israel. 36 men have already died because of the sin in the camp. Sin can entrap us, can lead us astray. It can tell us and make us feel what we want. You know, there's a quote that says, sin is like a jail cell, right? It seems all nice and comfy, and there doesn't really seem to be any reason to leave. But then one day, the cell door slams shut. You can't escape anymore. When you are continually living in sin and you lie to yourself that you are walking in the light, guess what? You make God a liar. When you deceive yourself and say that I'm fine, I can do what I want, I can do what I please, you are deceiving yourself. And when you say I can do what I want, I can come here and I can come in late and I can do what I want, guess what? That is not just affecting you, it is affecting everybody else because everyone else can see it. And they say, well, if they can come in late, I'll come in late too. Well, if they don't really put the effort in, I don't got to put the effort in either. But the scary thing about sin is that it separates you from God. Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 31, it is terrifying to fall in the hands of the living God. Is it terrifying to you? Or is it just Tell you what, if you continually live in sin and sin is where you want to live, you put God aside. When you embrace sin, you put God aside. How are you able to continue to live in sin and continue to call Him Lord of your life? You can't. It's impossible. Because God can't be in the presence of sin. In fact, what you have done is you have removed God off of His throne and have put yourself there. And said, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what I like. Let me show you what I like. Let me show you what pleases me. Let me show you that what I do and what I say, it goes, and that you'll just be happy because I'm happy. And you start bringing them down to your level. When you embrace sin, you put God aside. You tell God that my desires are worth more than a relationship with you. Not only does sin affect the people around us, but what about the sin that affects the body? Could people die because of your sin? That they walk away from the church because they didn't like the way that you were leading the church, because they didn't like the way that the members treated each other? And they say, whoa, if that's the kind of God they serve, I don't want to serve them. You lost a soul because of sin. When we prefer sin over God, we have lost our fear for God. We have lost our love for God. We have forgotten our first love. The best advice I can give you this evening: submit to God and resist the devil. James 4 tells us that. But you can't submit to God if you have one foot in the world and one foot in God's kingdom. You can't do it. You have to submit fully. You have to tell God that I know these things, they may look enticing, but I love you more than those things. You have to say that I know that those things may please my flesh, but I gain more in you. In James chapter 4, verses 1 through 10, one of my favorite chapters in the book of James talks about that relationship that you have with God. And that if you want to fix it, there are steps to fixing that relationship. There are steps to say, you know what? I feel remorse for what I've done. I want to fix this. I want to make sure that this bridge is mended. I want to make sure that I don't continue to live in sin, that I'd rather walk in the light. Then you need to submit to God, so that in the end you can humble yourself before God. This evening, if you are not a Christian, I hope this lesson wasn't scary, but I hope it was a wake-up call. The world is getting worse and worse day by day, as Cub said this morning. As Jeff said this evening, this world is not my home. I mean, we live in this world, but we're not to be of this world. And it can be difficult. And you can say, well, What do I got to do? I've sinned too much. I don't think God's going to forgive me. I can tell you right now, you are in a room full of people who have fallen short before the glory of God, and God's blood still continually washes their sin. And if you want to be able to be a part of that, we can study with you. I can study with you, and for the remainder time that I have here, Cub will study with you for whatever time is available. The elders, the deacons, they all study with you, but I urge you to not keep it hidden. I urge you to not keep it behind closed doors. Because whatever you keep in the dark, God will bring to light. And you don't want it to be too late. And if you are a Christian, and maybe you are suffering with something, and maybe you are suffering to a point that you don't know how to fix it, you don't know how to get over it, Galatians chapter 6 and verse 2 tells us that we are to bear each other's burdens, that we are to lift each other up, that we're to encourage, that we're to help, that we're to teach, but we can't do that if we don't know what's going on. So if there is a need, and if it needs to be made known publicly or privately, please let it be known now as we stand and sing.